sari sari sagari ga sari sada sari gari ga pa ga pa da pa ga pa da sari gari ga sari da sa pa da sari ga sa da pa gari sari ninno kori sanno tangashi ni vasa gare sare da re ga sa re gare sanno tangashi nivasa gare sare da re da sa re gare sanno tangashi nivasa gare gare sare ga ga pa da da sare ga 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 da pa gare ga ga sa da pa gare sanno tangashi nivasa gare gare sare ga ga pa da da sare ga 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 da pa gare ga ga sa da pa gare sanno tangashi nivasa pa da da pa gare sare gare sa da sare ga pa ga sa sa da pa gare sanno tangashi nivasa pa da da pa gare sa re ga re sa ga sa re ga pa ga sa sa da pa gare sanno tangashi nivasa sari gari sari sada sada pa gare sari sa sa sari re ga ga pa pa da da sari gari gari da sari sari sa pa da sa da ga pa da pa ri sa da pa gare sari sanno tangashi nivasa sanno tangashi nivasa sari gari sari sada sada pa gari sari sa sa sari re ga ga pa pa da da sari gari gari da sari sari sa pa da sa ga pa da pa ri sa da pa gari sari sanno tangashi nivasa sanno tangashi
திவ்யா பாலேந்திரா ஐஸ்வியா பாஸ்கரன் குறையொன்றும் இல்லாமல் பாடி சென்றிருக்கின்றார்கள். இந்த வயசிலே அருமையாக எங்களுக்கு ஒரு 2 பாடல்களை வழங்கி சென்றார்கள். அவர்கள் பாடும்போது ஐஸ்வர்யா அம்மா ரொம்ப சந்தோஷமாக இருந்துக்கிறாங்க பார்க்கும்போது தெரிகிறது. எல்லோருமாக சேர்ந்து மீண்டும் ஒரு கரவசத்தை அந்த சிறுமிகளை கொடுத்துவிட்டு அடுத்த போகின்றோம். அடுத்ததாக நமது சமூகத்தில் ஒரு மருத்துவ பட்டத்தில் பட்டம் பெற்று விளங்குகின்ற ஆரணி சண்முகலிங்கம் இங்கு வருகை தந்திருக்கின்றார். அவர் Resident Doctor of Victoria Hospital Department of Physiotherapy, Resident Association, London Health Science Center, London, Ontarioவில் கடமை புரிகின்றார். அவர் கல்வி சார்ந்து, தன் அறிவு சார்ந்து, தன் அனுபவம் சார்ந்து ஒரு சில கருத்துக்களை பரிமாற அன்புடன் இங்கே அழைக்கின்றேன்.
Hi everyone. My name is Dr. Adani Shanmugalingam. I'm acting in psych and I'm the president of the Residents Association this year. I was asked to give a small kind of talk about how mental health affects our community by one of the committee members here. So I'm going to try to make it as interactive as possible so that it won't be as boring as it might appear to be. So how I have a link to this community is my grandfather is Mr. Korthu Nadapom and his wife is Mrs. Parameshwari Amma. So that's how I belong to this community. So I was hoping to speak about individual mental health and how it impacts a family and then how the family impacts society. When a person is not balanced emotionally or mentally, obviously the family, it affects every aspect of their life. It can affect the family. They won't reach their full potential. Okay. They won't. I don't know if that's a good idea to hold the mic so close. Okay. Do I need to move from the speaker? Sure. So that's okay. I think we're okay. So I noticed that there are some young people in the front here, and I'm going to be targeting you guys because I think you have the most ability to make changes in society. However, the older population, I would love to hear from you as well, given that you've had life experience. So can someone tell me what mood means to them? What does mood mean to you? What does mood mean to you? Any volunteers? Sorry? State of mind, okay. I heard somebody say feeling. This is, shout out whatever you feel mood means. It's a pretty straightforward question, I think. So mood actually is defined as a state of feeling. So what the person experiences. What does a person with low mood look like? Low mood. Okay, I don't think you look like you've got some good mood there. Exactly. So a person with low mood can either be very tearful, grumpy. Children actually display low mood by being irritable. Teenagers also appear irritable. So irritable means you snap at things, you get very easily angered by things. So a person with low mood for more than 2 weeks is actually considered clinically depressed. When we think about psychiatry, we often, the word that we think about most commonly is depression. And depression, like any other medical illness, can be treated. It's not a situation where you're not strong enough to handle your stress, you're not strong enough to cope with things that are happening in life. It's actually a chemical imbalance in your brain, which can be very easily fixed with the right medication and the right support for your family. So what actually happens in your brain when you're depressed? What are some of the things that goes on? Okay, so think of your brain as a bunch of highways, neurons basically, right? So you've got neurotransmitters. Those are little messengers going from one highway to another highway. When somebody's depressed, there's 2 neurotransmitters that actually are not enough. They actually decrease in levels in the brain, and that is actually proven. There are lots of evidence to suggest that when somebody is depressed, they actually don't have enough chemicals. Now, on top of that, if you leave depression to go on for a long time, there's actually anatomical or biological changes that happen in your brain. So that means there will be changes. For example, the frontal lobe, the part of the brain that treat depression. Depression is just like an illness. like every other medical problem. People often, especially in our community, think that depression or any type of mental illness is because you can't handle stress very well, or you're just not strong enough. It's not the case. There's actually evidence to show that there are chemical changes that happen in the brain, along with anatomical or actual physical changes that happen in the brain. So you actually lose frontal lobe density and volume if you don't treat depression properly. So what other type of things can happen when somebody's depressed? Low mood. What else can happen? I think everybody knows the answers, but are just too shy to say it. And I think we all know at least one or two people that we've encountered in life who have experienced some form of depression. So what would happen to their appetite? Will they be eating a lot or will they be eating very little? Very little. What would happen to their sleep?
No disturbance, no peace sleep.
Exactly. So there would be disturbance in sleep. It's actually called clinical insomnia, which means they won't have very good sleep. The other thing that can happen is they won't have a lot of interest in things. So it's called anhedonia, meaning the opposite of hedonism is anhedonia, which means you just don't feel like doing the things that you'd like to do anymore. If that persists for more than 2 weeks, that can itself be used to clinically diagnose somebody with clinical depression. What's the worst that can happen with somebody who's depressed?
You mean try to commit suicide sometimes?
Exactly. That's exactly the answer that I was looking for. If somebody is left untreated, they can also start contemplating or thinking about how to end their life. It's a very serious situation. When I'm working on call in the emergency room, if somebody comes into the emergency room saying, I'm thinking about ending my life, there's two things I look for. Is this an active suicidal ideation or a passive suicidal ideation? So an active suicidal ideation means they've got a plan and they have the intention of dying. Passive suicidal ideation means they've thought about it, they're kind of thinking, life would be easier if I just wasn't alive, but it's not an immediate concern. So if somebody has active suicidal ideation, this is an emergency, I would go ahead and admit them for observation. There's a lot more that I can talk here, and I know that time is kind of limited, but the one thing that I do want to say, the take-home message is that any type of mental illness really has been shown to have a chemical imbalance. It's like if you have a cold, you take antivirals or antibiotics, right? The same goes with mental illness, particularly depression. Especially our community, there's a huge stigma when it comes to mental health. I'm sure, as I said, we know at least one person that we've encountered who possibly has or will have some form of depressive symptoms. What we end up, a lot of our people, what we end up doing is we go to our local friend or our family member, we ask them for advice, we don't go to professionals, and then eventually we pay the price. The suicide rate in our community has really increased, and it's quite upsetting. The other aspect of mental health that is very concerning is that there's substance abuse. So alcohol can actually decrease your mood. Long-term use of alcohol can and has been shown to lead to depression. Also, when you drink, your judgment goes out the window. You're not using your judgment very well. You take a lot more risk, so you're impulsive. Combine that with somebody who's depressed, they're more likely to commit suicide. So what are some of the risk factors of somebody who could potentially commit suicide? Who are the type of people that you would be concerned about? Elderly, wonderful, yes. The elderly people, studies have shown 65 and above, you've got a higher chance. Females, women, actually commit or attempt more than males do. However, males actually end up succeeding more than women do. The reason for this is that women, although they attempt, they don't. The men actually have more serious attempts. So women tend to overdose. Men tend to have a lot more serious or a lot more gruesome ways to try to end their life. So hanging themselves and that sort of thing. The other, there's a number of things that put somebody at risk if they're not married. So if they have no social supports, if they're single, then that's a problem. They're at higher risk. Past suicidal attempts. So again, if somebody's in the emergency room and I'm trying to figure out how safe they are, one of the things I ask for is how many times have you attempted suicide before? That gives me an indication as to if they've crossed that line once already, they're going to cross it again. And then we talked about the alcohol and substance abuse, which again impairs your ability to think properly. Alcohol has actually been shown to reduce brain volume in the frontal cortex. So the frontal cortex is right in the front of your head. This is actually the area of the brain that is responsible for your judgment and your social functioning. So that's why if you've known people who drink for a long time, for years, they don't quite know, they're the ones who are very loud at the parties, who don't know their boundaries, who make inappropriate comments. That's only because they've got atrophy in the front of their brain. They no longer have the full brain that they need to make those correct social decisions. So what should you do? What should you do if somebody, or you yourself feels that you meet the criteria, or you are somebody who's going through a little bit of depression or even a lot of depression? Go to if it's not an emergency, if there's no immediate risk of harming yourself or harming other people, then you can go to your family doctor. The family doctor will give you options. One of the options is medication, of course. It's very easily treatable. The second option is the referral to a psychiatrist like myself. Or the third option is psychotherapy. There's lots of things that can happen. Talk therapy, which is helpful. If it is a serious situation, then you need to find a way to get to the emergency room or go to your family doctor again. They'll get you to the emergency room. If you're having a hard time just with day-to-day life, there are lots of crisis numbers available through various hospitals. CAMH is one of them, Centre for Addiction and Mental Health in downtown Toronto, so that's an option. And I want to remind everyone, all medical doctors, like myself, are bound by an oath not to share any type of information that the patient gives us. So there is a confidentiality law that we have to follow. So I think a lot of people feel very concerned about, telling my doctor, and then they'll go and gossip to everybody they know. It doesn't work that way. We can lose our license if that happens.
What is that, I don't understand the last part. What did you say? Who will lose the license?
I was saying that doctors can lose their license if they break confidentiality for the wrong reasons. The only time that we have to break confidentiality is if somebody has expressed homicidal or the ideas to kill somebody else, then we can break confidentiality. Otherwise, we cannot disclose anything anyone tells us. We can lose our license for that.
How do I identify these people? Somebody looks depressed for me, but they say, no, I'm fine, don't take me.
That's a hard question to answer. It really comes down to insight, how much help they want. However, if you're concerned about their risk and their well-being, if you're worried that they might end up doing something to themselves, then you can actually go to a justice of the peace and get a Form 2. Or you can
I have to say I am sick and I have to take them to the doctor and say, like, actually not me, this is the person.
People have, I can't say yes or no about that, but people have done that. Yeah, people have, I have a patient right now whose mother brought him in saying she needed to go to the hospital because of heart problems. He came in with her and immediately we ended up having to intervene because he was quite manic. Manic is a bipolar disorder where the other end of depression is mania, where you're quite hyper and you're not quite making sense. So if I had to say one thing that you can take away from this, it's easily identifiable and it's easily treatable. This is something that affects our society. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of awareness. I think it comes from the Southeast Asian culture that we don't treat mental illness the same way that we would treat like a cold or a cough, the way we look at it. So it affects our community, and I think with more awareness, especially with the younger generation, we can certainly make a lot of difference when it comes to catching mental illness and then making a productive individual for society. Okay, thanks very much.
இப்போது பார் ஓப்பனாக இருக்கின்றது. அனைவரும் விரும்பியவர் அங்கே போய் உங்கள் பாஸ்கரனோடு தொடர்பு கொள்ளுமாறு கேட்டுக்கொள்கின்றோம். அடுத்ததாக ஒரு அரசியல் ஆலோசனைகளும் இருக்கின்றது. நீங்கள் தேவையான நீங்கள் காசு கொடுத்து வாங்கி உங்களுக்கு அதிர்ஷ்டம் இருந்தால் அதை